And welcome back. News Hour continues, and it's part two, the second hour. We begin our conversation with Professor Tom Ojenda, Senior Counsel. He served at the Judicial Service Commission as a Law Society of Kenya representative. He's also served as the Law Society of Kenya president at several regional agencies, of course, that are dealing with law. Thank you very much for joining us this evening. I guess these issues that have affected the judiciary definitely have been a concern to you, but I would want you to paint a picture, the reputation of a judge generally, not the specific one that we're talking about, the reputation of a judge being put out there in the public, such as in the manner that this has been done.
Thank you, Ken. I must say that, of course, a very good evening to you. I must say that it is unfortunate that the judiciary is going through this phase. I speak as an officer of the court and as one who actively practices every day. I think that one of the things that we must say about the judiciary is that an ideal judiciary must inspire the citizenry. It is one that should be beyond suspicion, like Caesar's wife, one that basically is full of integrity and one against whom no complaint should be preferred. I think that is the ideal that we're talking about. So it worries me, and it is a concern to many a citizen that you have a judiciary, you have complaints against judges in the judiciary. I speak as a member, a previous member, a former member of the Judicial Service Commission, and I know that this pains all of us.
Okay. Very interesting, your initial remarks. But a lot of Kenyans who are observing this, who are listening to what's going around, especially touching on judges, are concerned with one factor, that perhaps if a petition is not brought to the Judicial Service Commission, if there is no complaint, perhaps there exists no internal mechanism that the Judicial Service Commission continuously use to vet and to look at the judges so that the judiciary, the independence of the judiciary actually is guaranteed, but not only the independence, even the confidence that Kenyans have on the judiciary. So are there mechanisms that the Judicial Service Commission uses to continuously monitor the judges?
Thank you, Ken. I think the framework, the framers or the architects of the Constitution deliberately set out mechanisms to ensure that the judiciary is kept in constant check, and that is why we have a Judicial Service Commission defined under Article 171 with a membership under 172 of the Constitution, setting out representation from different quarters, the judiciary, the Law Society, the Public Service Commission, the Attorney General, all sitting in that commission. Now, these members have a well set out job or duty, and the jurisdiction of the Judicial Service Commission set out under Article 168.2 especially, gives them the inherent duty or the inherent function of removal. They can remove judges from office as long as they follow the lay down canons or the processes set out under Part 2 of the Judicial Service Act number 1 of 2011. So clearly, this mechanism of removal, in my view, creates a platform, a pedestal for self-introspection on the part of the judges. So clearly, you know that as a judge, if you engage in misconduct that violates the Constitution and that can be amenable to a review or to complaints before the JSC, then you know that you can be removed from office. I think that is a sufficient check. Of course, previously we have had processes that, quasi-political, I would say processes, like the radical surgery that has previously taken place, that were not, and that have been declared unconstitutional previously. I think that as long as we have Article 160 of the Constitution that preserves judicial independence, that is institutional for the institution of the judiciary, but also decisional, because remember also that judges are insulated under Article 165 from the decisions they make. They must also be independent enough to make decisions without looking back. So you must, it's a delicate balance where you must ensure that you clothe the judiciary and judges with sufficient independence to be able to decide cases, whilst at the same time ensuring that the institution itself is independent and is beyond reproach and cannot be intimidated. Because you can imagine a judge not having sufficient independence making a decision. Every decision will be dictated by the stronger in society. So I believe that this delicate balance, there must be that balance that ensures that judges have the ability to work freely without looking back. But at the same time, there is sufficient check to ensure that they do not run amok and run out of the field and do things out there. I think it is this balance that the Constitution intended to achieve in creating a judiciary that derives its authority from the people. And it is the people that therefore define the elaborate processes that are used in appointing judges. That is why vetting and all those processes pre-appointment are procedures where the people are allowed to participate.
Prof, how effective is this framework that exists within the Act, the Judicial Service Commission Act? How effective is this process? And even as you answer that, perhaps a reflection on any one of the cases that the Judicial Service Commission has taken on its own accord without being compelled or without someone coming in to petition them to take that case up?
There have been many cases. When I sat at the Judicial Service Commission, we had many complaints against many judges. And those complaints helped to define the parameters of complaints and what should eventually lead to a tribunal under 168 of the Constitution that would eventually lead to a removal. Remember, the removal of a judge is not a simple process. It has to follow a tribunal appointed by the President upon a sufficient basis being provided by a complainant to the JSC, or upon the JSC, upon an inquiry under 168 to take an inquiry and finding that there's sufficient evidence to ask the President to appoint a tribunal, by which time, of course, the judge then remains suspended until the tribunal finishes its process. Let me say this. The case of Mutava Musimi, I think it's a case that went on for a long time, ended in the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court then, Judge Maraga chaired, retired Chief Justice Maraga chaired that tribunal. The Supreme Court dismissing the appeal by the judge, because that is the last court of final resort when you are seeking to remove a judge. Now, that case lays or sets parameters for how this proceeding should be undertaken. And the judge was removed from office. So that shows you that this process is effective. It can lead to a removal of a judge from office. We had other cases that were brought. I remember we had some frivolous complaints brought against Judge J.B. Ojuang, then of the Supreme Court. Of course, those were led to, those failed. The tribunal sat and found that there wasn't a basis for removal, and the judge was returned to office. So that framework works because usually where cases are presented before the Judicial Service Commission, the Commission will undertake a preliminary hearing. That preliminary hearing is intended to establish whether a threshold has been met by the complaint brought to the Commission by a complainant. Even where the Commission commences or starts to hear a matter suo motu, as set out under 168, definitely the threshold must still be met as set out in the second schedule of the JS Act, which defines what has to be done for the Commission to satisfy itself that indeed a tribunal can be set up by the President. when the president is asked to do so.
Prof, my interest is actually with what you say. There have been several complaints that were brought before the Judicial Service Commission when you served. I'm looking at instances that the Judicial Service Commission in itself decided to do an investigation over a judge to say, let's take a look at Judge Tom Ojienda, for example, and see how he has been performing and see if there are any hidden skeletons. Is there such a case? Because we know the only way it's been happening in the country is if a complaint is brought before the Judicial Service Commission. So are there those instances? Because that was the basis of my first question.
Yeah, I've said this, that I've said the law allows that process, but there has to be a basis. There must be, a judge can be removed from office, for instance, for being lazy, unduly lazy, and being unable to perform the task of a judge. You can be removed from inability. Inability can also be out of, yes, there are judges that have gone through that process, and when I sat, yes, we have judges that have had to be removed or that have gone through the process of an inquiry initiated by the commission because they were simply not performing. They were simply not able to live up to the job or the work that judges are intended to do. Because judges also make returns. Judges also are able to need to show that they are performing their task as judges. I know that more often than not, the commission will rely on complaints because it's complaints that initiate or that bring about some of these questions. But of course, where there are acts that are committed by judges that are out there that threaten the very ethos of the office of the judge, then I think the Judicial Service Commission must initiate the process under 168(2).
Okay.
I think that is, for instance, where there are no judgments, there's misconduct that is not out there, but that basically militates against the office of judge, the JSC would act or is supposed to act.
Okay. I'm going to ask you about the composition of the Judicial Service Commission as it is, and if there's need to rethink it, because if you look at the majority, 5 out of the 11 are serving judicial officers in the nature of magistrates or judges being their representatives. I'll ask you about that. But my other question is, in cases where this claims or allegations that have been brought before the Judicial Service Commission where you served without real evidence, because getting the evidence could be harder or hard, how does the Judicial Service Commission deal with such cases? Do they dismiss them ab initio? What do they do with them?
Yes, there are lots of complaints that are brought before the JSC and that are dismissed ab initio because you have cases of sole losers. You have litigants who lose cases and who, right away think that because they have lost a case, the judge was unfair or has misconducted himself. Now, those are often dismissed where there's a complaint has no leg to stand on. Usually it will be dismissed by the JSC. Now, many complaints are also received by the Office of the Chief Justice. And usually the Chief Justice will present the complaints to the Commission. The Commission will, at its sittings, consider those complaints, and those that have no basis will often be dismissed. Now, you also have situations where there is some threshold established by the Commission. Where there are those thresholds, the Commission will often call the judge at an initial inquiry to respond to the allegations made within the 14-day period. If the response is sufficient or disposal of the question, those again will be dismissed. If the response does not dispose of the question, then a further inquiry or investigation may be undertaken, whereupon, if there's sufficient ground, the findings out of that process will lead to an advisory to the President to appoint a tribunal to undertake a substantive inquiry into that complaint, of course, leading to a removal or a dismissal of that complaint after the tribunal sat and had the matter. On the composition of JSC, that is set out under Article 172 of the Constitution. Now, the JSC has 2 advocates, 1 female male, elected competitively by lawyers. Then we have the 5 judges that you have referred to, a representative of the Public Service Commission, the Attorney General, and then, of course, 1 nominated by the President to represent the public, a man and a woman, 2. A man and a woman.
Okay.
Now that number.
I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you a specific question on that, Professor. It's actually Article 171. It's sometimes hard to correct your teacher. It's 171 that establishes the composition of the JSC. So my question to that, because the composition, if you look at it, the Chief Justice is a judge, the Supreme Court judge is a judge, the Court of Appeal is a judge, High Court, and magistrate. Obviously, if you look at that composition, that's the interest of many Kenyans. And then there's a case coming before the Judicial Service Commission. Doesn't it initially even worry someone who's bringing a complaint to the Judicial Service Commission against one of their own, and yet there are 5, the majority? Forget about the Attorney General even first. Forget about the 2 advocates.
I do agree with you, Ken.
Yes.
That indeed the number as set out in 171 is top heavy with judicial officers.
Yes.
Whether magistrate, judge representing the magistrates, and then the other judges of the High Court, Court of Appeal, and Supreme Court are all judges.
Yes.
And then Chief Justice chairing is also a judge. Of course, that is top heavy with judges. And I think there have been concerns about those numbers. But in my view, though, I think the JSC is more about the mandate. If we have had level-headed judges sitting in the JSC and doing a good job, so it is more a question of who is elected to the JSC, in my view.
Okay.
It's not just about representation by judges, because you have judges who will deal with complaints whether or not it is brought to them, it is brought against judges. Remember, those complaints go to the core of the functions of the institution to which they belong. And they must ensure that that institution is able to function without, is beyond suspicion and does not fall out of repute or fall into disrepute in the eyes of members of the public.
Yes.
So I don't think that it is just about representation, about judges sitting there and therefore there's a problem. Remember, even 2 people, the Law Society representatives, if they speak out or stand up for certain things within the same JSC, it makes a big difference.
Okay.
Because remember, JSC is about specific positions and stands that you take. And because the Commission does not usually vote in unanimity, even if you are one and you have strong views, you will make a great change in the manner that things are undertaken in the JSC.
Okay.
That is the practice there, I'll tell you.
That's very important, because I wanted to ask, what is the decision threshold at the Judicial Service Commission in any decision they have to make? What is the threshold? How many members do we need? The quorum usually would be 6. 6, okay.
To make a decision. But usually, in terms of how the decision flows, even 2 people can pose a problem. If they don't agree with the decision, it will never go, because they will issue. They will simply take a different position, and that will disturb the decision. Okay. So it is never about judges, and in my view, judges are always honorable women and men, even in JSC. Okay. They will take positions that are judicious all the time, and usually it will take 1 or 2 cantankerous individuals to change the course of JSC. That is how it has always been. I'm sure when certain members of the JSC sat like Ahmed Nasir Abdullah, you heard their voices. He was alone then, representing the LSK. There were 2 of them, but you often heard his voice. When I sat in JSC, you heard my voice, whether or not I was alone or with a colleague. So it is about what you say at JSC. It is about what you stand for. Okay. It is never about the numbers. It is about
What you stand
individual
for. Okay.
members in the JSC and what they stand for.
Okay, I'll throw Spanner into the works a little bit. Prof, having served at the Judicial Service Commission, would you, if given an opportunity, and you've really helped write some laws in this country, given an opportunity, would you try to change that composition to look different, or you'd retain it as it is?
I think I would in terms of I think the presidency has too many representatives there. He appoints a man and a woman appearing for the public, and then you have the Attorney General sitting in JSC, and you have the nominee of the Public Service Code. Those are 4. Then you have the judges, 5. Then you have the Independent Law Society of Kenya, which has 2. I think if we got more members from the bar, another 2 or 3, that would make a big difference to the working of the Judicial Service Commission.
Okay.
So that you kind of balance. Because remember, the other 2 are appointive. Most of the other positions are elective. So that the only appointed positions are the 4 that the president appoints: the Public Service Commission, Attorney General, by virtue of office, and then the other 2, female and male, representing the public. Now, those 4 are therefore appointed, and the others are elected. Okay. I think we need to increase the other elected ones so that we have 2 or 3 more representing the other professions.
Well said.
Perhaps a position of professional societies can have a representative, and then you have 1 or 2 more from the law society or the professional bodies. That, I think, would balance out the numbers at the Judicial Service Commission.
Okay.
But I think overall, in my view, it has tried to do its work.
Okay. The fact that you say the Judicial Service Commission and its composition and the decision thereof is never usually about the numbers. I'll take you to South Africa and look at the Judicial Service Commission of South Africa. Look at the composition. My interest is how the commissioners are put into the Judicial Service Commission. The Council of our provinces, for example, has a role to play. Look at even the members of parliament are found within the Judicial Service Commission. What is the mischief, for example, that South Africa was attempting to address with this?
I think it is the extraction of the membership in South Africa is important. Now, in Kenya, we try to balance out that through vetting. Remember, once these individuals are nominated or elected, the election is supposed to play a role to weed out, to bring the public in, the popular interest. That's number 1. But number 2, once these individuals then are elected, they go through vetting by parliament. So all the members also go through parliamentary vetting before they are finally appointed. Of course, the appointed ones perhaps don't go through the same process, but the important question is that they have also been vetted to be in those positions before they are appointed by His Excellency the President.
Okay.
But I think that largely what we must look at is the independence of the judiciary, because all judges, of course, are vetted. They go through a rigorous process. The public participates before they're appointed as judges.
Okay.
So I think it balances out. The mischief is involve the public in the process, and I think that is achieved through the process that lead to appointments of the judges.
One of the reasons why it's easy to think about gatekeeping in the Judicial Service Commission, Professor, is once again on that composition. The Chief Justice, the President, and also sits there. Look at the Court of Appeal. There's a representative there. The High Court representative there. Perhaps talk to us about what was the real intention of having all these courts represented at the Judicial Service Commission.
No, I think for representation, I think if you look at the design and architecture of the Constitution, it's about representation. And therefore, each court needed to be represented because you have complaints from each court, you have programs for each court, you have budgets for each court, and therefore, representation was important for all levels of court. Okay. The magistracy, the High Court, the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court. I think that is the only sense about having every level of court represented. And it has worked well, because you will find that overall or traditionally, the female representative elected by the Kenya Magistrate and Judges Association has always been from the lower court. Okay. The male representative has always been a judge, and that has always continued, so that you have representation at both levels. I'm sure that if the vote was undertaken democratically, only magistrates would appear, could be elected to the JSC, but you have some understanding. For the advocates, you have the male and female interchangeably elected to the JSC, but since inception, the female and male have always been elected from all levels of the profession. Okay. Because the minimum requirement is 15 years. So you find that those who have practiced for that period are the ones who qualify, so that you have some level of seniority at the JSC. So that those who qualify to be appointed judges as well, and they're fairly judicious as well. Okay. So I think that what has defined the election is representation of every level of court, so that you speak for your court in a sense that promotes interests of your court and or where you come from, or from where you are elected as a representative. Then the PSC representative is important because they are relevant, because they are able to define the interrelationship between the Public Service Commission as an employer and what we do at the Judicial Service Commission. It's a pedestal for a comparative basis for every function that we undertake at JSC. That's an important process, I must say. Okay. The AG is important because it's the legal advisor to the president, to the country, and therefore brings questions of finality, gazettements and all from the office, and is the interlink between the Judicial Service Commission and the president, because remember, the president still appoints judges once they're nominated by the JSC for appointment. Okay. The role of the ombudsman, how does it tie in with the role of JSC? Does it have a bearing? Do they run parallel? How does it work with the JSC, especially in terms of receiving complaints? The judicial ombudsman. The ombudsman is supposed to be a check on maladministration within the public sphere. Members of the public will always go to the ombudsman where there are delays in their processes, administrative or otherwise. Now, the JSC, or within the judiciary, we also have an ombudsman, so that all complaints that are filed with the ombudsman, the national ombudsman, then will be referred back to the JSC ombudsman, so that they can deal with questions of delays, for instance, of judgments, rulings, misplaced files, magistrates not coming to court, judges delaying judgments, those kind of things. Okay. And then the ombudsperson, who is within the judiciary, has always been the Deputy Chief Justice, gets in touch with the judges to iron out those administrative questions. Okay. So the ombudsman in the judiciary pretty much plays the same role as the national ombudsman, who deals with questions of lethargy, questions of maladministration, questions of basic misconduct of public officers. All right. Would a petition such as the one that has been presented before the Judicial Service Commission also come from the ombudsman? Can they on their own decide to initiate and present a petition to the Judicial Service Commission? With the latest decision from court, individuals are the ones that should present a complaint, because a complaint cannot be general. A complaint must be specific. It can't be a general complaint on a general conduct coming from nowhere. Okay. Because I think what the courts have done, the three-judge bench has done, and I think I agree with them, is to ensure that they cushion the judiciary from malicious complaints coming from quarters of dissatisfied Kenyans or Kenyans who simply want to make the judiciary and judges look bad. Okay. I think that is why complaints must be from individuals. You can't generally say that you have heard that this judge does not deliver judgment, you have heard that this judge is corrupt, you've heard that this judge was seen at this and that place. No, that undermines the independence of the institution of the judiciary.
Okay.
And that is what Article 166 to protect. You must, as a complainant, have a specific complaint of a specific case that hurts you as an individual. And I think for me, that decision is a great decision.
Okay. The other thing that is of concern is what you call homeboy mentality in terms of those sitting at the Judicial Service Commission. Is this something that perhaps when you were sitting at the commission, you had people talk about? There is protection around.
No, I was never a cartel. I think I didn't protect any homeboy, but it is important to note that that is a concern in certain quarters, that you will have favors for some homeboys, or favors that would benefit certain individuals. But I must say that I was never, I've never protected a homeboy. Perhaps I've no homeboy.
Perhaps no homeboy, yes.
But it is important to note that the JSC ought to strike a balance in terms of representation.
Okay.
Now, a skewed representation in JSC has obvious results. The results will be non-representation of certain quarters of the society. And I think that would then militate against the very sense of constitutionalism, the very sense of representation as set out under Article 10 and Article 6 of the Constitution. I think largely those are concerns that are valid and that every institution should comply with. Otherwise, you know, the sad thing, Ken, is that when representation becomes a question, then an institution loses face, because then people will look at the institution and they'll not see it as an institution. They see it as belonging to a particular community, and that is not good for the institution.
Would you say that the current JSC as composed has no skewed representation?
It has skewed representation. JSC is not well constituted. That is in the public domain. I will not mince my words. There's a problem with it, and it needs to be properly constituted. Okay.
Let's talk about now the external influence to the commissioners, especially when a question has been raised from within. Did it happen? Do you think it happens?
What did you say, Ken?
I'm talking about external influence to the decisions that are made by the Judicial Service Commission. When you served there, did it happen? Do you think it happens in this country that there is a lot of external influence?
Ken, I must say that representation is complex, and usually there will always be attempts to influence your decision. That's normal, I think, whether you're in JSC or sitting in any other institution. It calls upon you to be independent. And at times when you're independent, of course, you'll run into problems. Those are normal things. Some of us have run into problems. We are used to problems because of certain stands that we take in society. Okay. But let me say this, that every public officer will face all these sorts of problems of influence. And I think a public officer has the inherent duty to stand up and to stand up for what is right and to do what is right, because that is what will define you. If you run away with the decisions and are easily influenced into making certain decisions to favor certain positions, temporary positions or momentary positions, then of course it takes away from you as an individual and as a professional. I think it is important to always stand up for what is right and to always do what is right, because that is what will define you. I think that we are never short of influence, but you must stand up and speak the truth, and I think the truth will always set you free.
Okay. I know the removal of a judge is a complex process, and also the fact that the judges have constitutional protection. But the question is, when doubt is raised over the integrity of a judge, Professor, why is it also difficult? I know the removal is difficult, the protection is guaranteed, but why is it so difficult for a judge to say, because of those integrity questions that have been raised, I offer to step aside to allow the judicial, actually it goes, you don't even have to go to the Judicial Service Commission for the president to form a tribunal to investigate me. Why is it so difficult? Is it our attitude? Is it our culture? Is it just impunity in Kenya?
No, I think judges are the most exposed officers. In my view, judicial work is very hard. I would never try to be a judge myself because in every matter that you do, there is a party that is unhappy because they lose the case and they'll always want to complain against you. And there's, of course, the one that is happy that has won the case. It's often very difficult for judges to balance the interests of both sides.
Okay.
And therefore, judges must be protected. And that is why the Constitution protects judges on two fronts: decisional independence and institutional independence. And that is why the procedure for their removal is not easy, because judges, remember, are individuals of impeccable character, vetted through a long and laborious process of appointment. They are vetted by the public, they are always in the public eye, and they do a lot of work. Judges, by the way, can do a lot of hard work, and that is why judges must be respected. And I believe that the process of their removal through tribunals should only be undertaken in the rarest of rare cases where there's sufficient evidence.
Okay.
To allow judges to be beaten around by the public is not fair, because these are men and women who are tested. These are men and women who serve in the hallowed corridors of justice with integrity. And when there are questions around them, it is good to interrogate and ensure that those questions meet the thresholds for their removal.
Okay. Very interesting, because we know about the standoff on the appointment of the judges, and perhaps I would ask, could the president be vindicated that indeed judges need to be looked at further? But when we began, Professor, we said the judiciary is doomed if it does and doomed if it doesn't. At some point, we thought that the judiciary was not going to take up this case, the one that has been trending. And of course, we saw today that the petitioner also went to court and went to the Judicial Service Commission. So the doomed if they do, Professor, is because there will be frivolous cases that will be brought before the Judicial Service Commission, because you're opening a can of worms. And at the end of the day, if they don't also, it will be, they're protecting one of their own. Now that you're talking about striking this balance, how hard is it to strike that balance for the Judicial Service Commission whenever that petition is brought before them?
Ken, why judges should be protected? Judges don't speak in press conferences. The other day I saw one speak. They normally don't speak. They are often quiet. And so they get the raw end of the stick because they'll be attacked and they will be quiet. And so there's an imbalance. It's unfair to just attack them around, because usually they'll hardly defend themselves. And that is why you need that evidence. The JSC has to take up the challenge of going through the long process of establishing, in any complaint brought before it, the veracity, the weight, the cogency of the evidence presented before it, to be able to establish that the threshold of removal has been met by the complainant. That is an important process. And as you say, if they don't undertake this process, they are doomed. If they undertake it and don't undertake it well, again, they are doomed. And that is why they must always follow the law. Judges, because they are judges and judiciaries, must always follow the letter of the Constitution, the letter of the JS Act number 1 of 2011. To the very end, before they can recommend that this is a matter, or that the matter before them is one that requires the establishment of a tribunal by His Excellency the President.
Okay. Would you advocate for the Judicial Service Commission at this point to have a political connotation, or sort of?
No, I would always say that the judiciary should always be depoliticized all the time. I know that there are times when, politics will always come into play, and especially around the election, it becomes very tricky for judges, because you are nearing all those petitions that will come to the judiciary, and of course with the possibility of the main petition against the election for the executive. But the largest judiciary should be professional. They should keep off politics.
Okay.
Of course, be alive to the politics, but keep off politics in decision making. Because if you are guided by politics or act because of their attractiveness or the attraction of the politics of the time, then you will always put politics at the forefront. And that is the concern. Politics may play a role in balancing and in those questions during appointments.
Okay.
But should never play a role in the removal of judges.
Okay.
To do so would lead to a constitutional violation and discrimination. And that is what Article 27 speaks to. You don't want to remove someone because they are from some place, they are a minority, and you do not want to unfairly target a judicial officer.
All right.
So what you should do is just follow the law and do the right thing.
Okay. Prof, I'm coming to you for my last question because it will be related to politics away from the judiciary. But first, I'd like to play the video of the week. I hope where you are, you can view the video of the week. Let's take it, then we come back and finish with Professor Gender, Senior Counsel. All right, Prof, I hope you enjoyed that video if you are able to view it. But politicians and the electorate, as the politicians fight, as the electorate fights, the politicians are eating. I understand from the grapevine that, Prof, you are running. You haven't confirmed, but are you running? And is that something that will happen?
Ken, oh my God. I thought this was a professional interview.
I just want to know if you're running. It's a season of politics.
Yes, but yes, I will be claiming a stake. I will want to represent the people of the great county of Kisumu in Senate. Yes, I'll be running for Senate next year.
Okay, you'll be running for Senate. Our video of the week shows what's happening as the politicians are celebrating and eating the pie. The electorate is fighting. Now, the other day, there were concerns about the beginning of campaigns, and there are other parties who are campaigning. And what is the situation in the country? Would you term this, from where you sit, as campaigns or a meet of the people tour?
I think at the moment, a lot of what the activities that many politicians are doing is basically introducing themselves to the people. They are enjoying their freedom of association, freedom to exercise their choice. And I think meeting the people, in my view, and uniting the country is not campaigning, in my view. Uniting the country, getting the country together is not campaigning, because you're simply saying, I'm here and this is my interest.
Okay.
You're not really out there having campaign slogans or campaigning for election, because the election period, the election calendar, electoral calendar in any event, hasn't started running.
Okay. And as I let you go, the Devolution conference is on. It is the 7th Devolution conference. It's in Makueni. And taking stock of Devolution, being an advocate senior, how would you rate our performance looking at Devolution 7 years on? Have we done well? Is it time that we sit back and rethink the whole devolution?
I think devolution has changed the face of this country. I will just mention Kitui County. I've seen products that are amazingly interesting. Pairs of shoes, honey beer, masks and things done by Kikotech. This is amazing. Devolution has changed the face of this country. You look at Kisumu County, now it is called Europe.
Okay.
A lot of achievements, changing faces. Look at Kakamega County, the infrastructure is amazing. Machakos County, going forth. You look at many counties that are basically changed from what they used to be. Devolution has done great things in this country, because what it has done as well is that if you look at the original intendment, and I think we thank Baba for this, okay. Article 176, 177, 178, the intendment was disperse money from the center, allow counties, the 47 counties, to develop at the same level as Nairobi, because previously it was Nairobi and its environs that were developed. Devolution is a great thing.
Okay.
I think that going forward, the electorate need to know that devolution has not only changed the face of this country, but we should go to the level where more funds are disbursed to the counties. To the counties. And you know that is why I'm sad that we lost the BBI, because it had a great formula of disbursing more funds to the counties.
To the counties. All right, the rethinking of devolution, 2 years biannually instead of each year. Would you support that? Just in a minute. It's already happening. It's already been proposed after the next general election. We'll only have.
I support that. We need to make it better. Of course, I said we need to always evaluate the projects and the programs, and of course have strong oversight.
Okay.
And that is why we also need a strong Senate that is enabled to undertake oversight. With a strong Senate, I can assure you, Ken, that governors will even perform better.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much, Professor Tom Ojenda, Senior Counsel. My teacher, it's good changing the roles tonight. I'm the one asking the questions. Thank you for coming for our show tonight. Good to see you. All right, as I let Professor go, let's talk about devolution further. And corruption has been devolved to counties, despite the great expectations that it will bring the government closer to the people, increasing transparency and accountability. The Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission is investigating almost 30 former and current governors for swindling, or allegedly swindling, county coffers through patronage systems that revolve around family, friends, and local elites. Our senior political affairs reporter, Patrick Amimo, paints for us the picture of how corruption has